I can teach you how to bewitch the mind and ensnare the senses. I can tell you how to bottle fame, brew glory, and even put a stopper in death.
Welcome to Snape Chat, the voice of the Snapedom, the podcast where we discuss all things Snape, always. Join us as we dive into the world of the bravest man we ever knew in art, fanfic, meta, and more. Obviously. This is Snapecentric with episode 46, Snirthday 2025. We're celebrating with fics from Lazarus, Nocturn, Writcraft, Shostakobitch, and Montrasity. I'm joined by Lazarus, DragomirKingsman, Snapecentric, and Maso for the listening party. Enjoy the show. This is Snapecentric, and I'm here with Maso.
Hi there.
Snapecentric.
Hello.
Lazarus.
Yo.
And DragomirKingsman.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I don't know the pronunciation. I stole it out of a book.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's the funny thing. A lot of words you don't hear, so the pronunciations can be really different.
I know how to pronounce nothing.
Yeah, me neither. Anyway, we're here today to celebrate Snape's 65th birthday.
Wow. Has it been that long?
Whoa.
Yes, it's been that long. He was born in 1960, and it's already 2025, so.
Oh, golly.
That tracks.
We're also celebrating Maso's birthday.
Yay.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And Lazarus.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Whoa.
Yes, it's nice to have recent birthdays here.
Great to have a birthday so close to your favorite character. Although I will point out that, and I feel for Snape with this, my birthday was very often the day I went back to school after winter break, and that sucked. And I can only imagine him, his break is over, it's his birthday, and now he has to face awful children.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Happy birthday. Here's bullying.
Yep,
Yes.
exactly,
Oh, God.
exactly.
Oh, no.
That's probably the only present he got, too.
Yeah, I hope somebody got him something. Maybe Minerva.
Lily, for a
Yeah.
time.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking like when he's an adult, but
Oh, yeah, no. Well, he's not getting bullied by children as an adult, I don't.
I mean,
Sometimes, maybe.
sometimes, yeah, certainly harassed and hassled.
Depends on your definition, I guess.
Yeah, true.
Mhm. Yeah. Especially Maso's version where he's short and salty.
Hey, mine is short and salty, too.
Yay, short Snape.
Short Snape.
All right. We have some really good stories to share with you today. And we'll start with Lazarus's story, Godfathers.
This is Godfathers by Lazarus, Drago, and Ori. Summary. Severus Snape has traded what might be one of his last peaceful summers for a tumultuous few months housing the boy who lived after Hogwarts' student registry notified him of a potential abuse case at number 4 Private Drive. If that wasn't bad enough, he finds himself revealing far more than he ever should have, and far more than Albus Dumbledore ever would have allowed, to the boy about his past and his mother. When Sirius Black reveals himself with the intent of saving his godson from Snape, the three of them end up standing begrudgingly together to find Peter Pettigrew and clear Black's name before the proper authorities can be involved. Harry finds solace in the unexpected care of an unjustly convicted man and an ex-Death Eater. Meanwhile, Black grapples with repressed attraction to the man he's spent his childhood tormenting. Previously, Harry wakes up Severus to tell him that there's an enormous black dog scratching at the window. Snape sends him to bed while staring at the beast for the rest of the night. Chapter 4. Snape tugs at his robes, a far more casual set gifted to him by Minerva several years ago. Diagon Alley is a crowded and dense place, which always makes his skin crawl unpleasantly. Too many unknowns, too many angles to consider, too little cover. The crowd jostles him occasionally, and it takes every ounce of willpower to keep himself restrained, in control, calm. You are calm. Why did you not ask someone to provide you with books for the summer break, or even copies of the requisite passages? Potter, who treks along behind him in a simple muggle jacket, t-shirt, and jeans Snape had bought for him in his approximate size, rubs at the back of his head. I don't know. Why would I? I mean, if you have to buy them. Irritation seethes in him. At Albus for his carelessness, at Minerva for her blindness. Dear as she is to him, she is blind to these matters. It is why they fall to him. And he, too, was blind. And here was Potter, suffering academically for lack of materials, lack of space, lack of time. He rubs at the bridge of his nose. Plenty of Hogwarts students get assistance with their costs of attendance and schooling materials. It wasn't money that was the issue, sir. I know, he says, voice clipped and angry to his own ears. This entire situation is going to put him in cardiac arrest before he's 40. A woman in eye-searingly garish robes knocks shoulders with him, and Snape sucks in a breath, nearly stepping on the boy's foot as he's pushed backwards. A hand brushes his waist and snaps back as if stung. Damned pickpockets. His lungs feel tight. Come along, Potter. Everything all right, sir? Fine, he snarls. Potter seems almost enchanted by the strength of the crowd, the bustle and loudness and crush of humanity. Severus would typically slip through Nocturn Alley to avoid these great, pressing masses of people, but he loathed to bring Potter through that wretched place. Another person presses into his personal space, and he feels his control fraying rapidly. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Count to 20. Recipe for Felix Felicius. Draught of living death. Wolfsbane. He snags Potter's wrist and powers through the crowd, reeling through every complicated recipe he can think of to keep his mind off the overbearing sensation of trapped, trapped, trapped. Hey, Potter yells. The street spits them out in front of the second-hand bookstore. Harry blinks up at the storefront. Sir? What about Flourish and Blots? Snape scowls and very forcibly reminds himself that Potter was likely never taught to manage his money. Pissing your legacy away already, Potter? The boy flushes with anger, and Snape admits to himself that may have been a bit much. His lungs still feel too tight. It isn't that expensive. Under his breath, he mutters, Git. Snape lets it go, with a great portion of his very little remaining patience and sanity, and takes the boy firmly by the shoulder to steer him into the shop. Used books are hardly an indignity, he rumbles. Especially ones you might only use once. What is your class schedule? Potter pats his pockets, fumbling for a crumpled, folded-up sheet of parchment that had been tucked away with his belongings. He holds it out, and Severus takes it with a frown. Divination! Feels like a stone has dropped into the pit of his stomach, but there's no need to let slip how perturbed he is. After all, true prophecies are once-in-a-lifetime events. The rest of the time, they're self-important dribble. Potter groans. Not you too, he says. You should have taken ancient runes, Snape says clippedly, and as much as he loathes Potter's projected career path, McGonagall told him about the boy's talk of being an Auror, he adds, divination will be useless for an Auror. Do you have any idea how much dark magic uses runes and sigils? Potter frowns. I know? What would dark wizards be doing with dusty old runes? You certainly are a shining example of a Hogwarts-educated student. Snape drawls, incredibly unimpressed. Let's just get my books. Harry mutters, sulking and angry, embarrassed. The boy heads off, towards the textbooks, before he can respond. Snape lets himself lag behind, watching the boy snag a required text and crack it open to ensure it wasn't damaged or defaced inside. While he does, Snape considers, remembers, the charm around his own neck, hidden beneath his clothing. He hesitates. Lily had made that when they were in their own third year. She'd made 5 of them, hoping to give them to others, and given him 3 when Mary McDonald had mocked her for being lame and sappy. She'd been incredibly upset, called them stupid and ugly wastes of time. Probably never wore hers again, and he knows she gave one to Toonie before she got made fun of, which probably met some sort of horrible demise decades ago. But Severus hasn't taken his off in years. It's not more than a simple protection charm anchored to a rune, stamped into a simple tin pendant. He knows where the other two are, tucked into a rusty lockbox full of old photos and trinkets from years and years ago, untouched since Lily's death. He doesn't know what possesses him, except that Potter's clearly stewing in his own embarrassment in a classic teenage snit, and it's made him feel strangely. He gets a hold of the chain and tugs it out of his shirt collar. Potter, he says. The boy turns, scowling at him, but anger fades into faint confusion as he tugs the chain over his head and holds it out. The little gray pendant hangs between them on its long, cheap, stainless steel chain. The rune is a little crooked, stamped oddly, having been made by Lily's 13-year-old hands, clumsily in her father's workshop. This was made by your mother. Potter stares at him like he's grown a second head, or a tail. Maybe he has. Before he can regret it, before the stingy, selfish creature wound around the rungs of his ribcage can pull taut, he takes the boy's hand and drops the pendant into it. The chain slithers into his open palm. Snape closes his fingers around it and feels relief of some strange variety. Potter's eyes are wide and round. Rune work is useful. Your mother loved it. He hardly feels the words leave him, too focused on the way Potter frowns, hand tightening around the little trinket, holding it close. He turns his attention back to the list, uncomfortable for different reasons entirely now. Monster Book of Monsters, he sighs. He's not exactly disdainful of Hagrid. The man is incredibly friendly with him despite his everything. Severus will take tea with him after his treks into the Forbidden Forest once in a blue moon, even. But the big man is not what he'd ever consider wise. Intelligent, yes. Compassionate, yes. But Severus is concerned his being a teacher is going to bite him in the arse, especially when he chooses books that can bite children. Without concise instructions on how not to get bit, at that. God. Hagrid's class, Potter says, nodding faintly. He's examining the pendant, turning it over again and again to examine the rune pressed into it. Then he loops it around his neck. It's, warm? Protection charm, Snape says shortly. He doesn't want to talk about the pendant anymore. He feels naked without its weight. He doesn't know if he could have parted with it at all if he did not have a spare at home. Maybe that's selfish. Probably. Probably. Severus has had to live with being selfish for years now, but it still chafes once in a while. He pulls a few more rudimentary texts Potter needs. Astronomy, history, charms, transfiguration. He pulls a book on basic arithmetic as well, and a primer meant for Muggle-born children that he and Lily had found useful, which has apparently had 5 subsequent updated editions printed in the interim. He offloads them into Potter's hands, who sputters. That's more than the list. Snape ignores him sharply. When they move to the potions and herbology section, he pulls the potions text and flips through it to make sure it's exactly the correct edition. As he'd noted in his course list, and as most students happily ignore, the latest edition has a few glaring errors in it, and is harder to notate, with more cramped margins. Of course, all of them are full of simple errors and inefficiencies, as he's been skimming out of the book by writing instructions on the board for years. He's tried to publish his own textbooks, but no editor will take him as a client, and he keeps getting barred by other people in the field. Many of the older masters are still bitter he broke that blasted record. He places it atop the stack and pulls Pomona's preferred herbology text for the year. This, too, he checks the edition on, ensuring it isn't last year's, which Pomona had complained contained several errors and misprints. They won't carry the Monster Book of Monsters here, Snape tells him wryly as they approach the counter. He snags the stack from Potter and sets it on the counter, getting a gap-toothed smile from the elderly woman behind the counter. Professor Snape, always good to see you. How are you, dear? Fine, he tells her, with a grim smile that feels flat and wrong on his face. She rings them up swiftly, and he hears Potter pulling out galleons. Before the boy can put anything on the counter, he says, "Do you have that text I ordered last month?" Subtly, he puts himself between Potter and the counter. He hears a huff of annoyance. The cashier beams. "Oh, yes, I had to talk to some people, of course, but that friend of mine is good for it, you know. Took it off her hands for a pittance." She pulls the book from under the counter, plain black with red edging to the pages. Severus snaps it off the counter as soon as she's laid it down and flickers through it. It is, indeed, the second volume on that treatise on old blood wards and pacts he'd been trying to find. "You be careful with that now, Professor. I know it's all academic, but those..." She lowers her voice. "There's a reason those books were burned. Hate to see something happen to you." "I am nothing if not careful and discreet," he assures her. Then he pulls the payment, a quarter of what Potter might have paid at Flourish and Blots, out of his satchel and dumps it on the counter. The boy sputters, "Sir, you don't have to pay for my books." Snape presses the coins forward with another flat, wrong-edged smile and picks up their purchases. "Please take care of yourself, Mildred." "Of course, boy," the woman says, rolling her eyes. "You stay alive now, hey?" The door chimes on the way out the door. Potter dogs his heels. "You really didn't have to do that," he insists. I have a lot of money, sir. I don't need." "You have an inheritance that you should save for emergencies, Potter, or to put towards your future." Snape feels irritation well in him again, both from the crowds they'll have to go through the moment they step off the walk and for Potter's stubbornness. Books aren't going to bankrupt me, sir." "Every penny counts," Snape tells him firmly. Potter stares at the side of his face. "And you never know what the future holds." A pause where he allows Potter to think on this. The boy is watching him strangely. He wonders if anyone has ever tried to tell him to attempt to save his money. "So why are you spending yours on me?" Snape frowns at the confusion on Potter's face. He shrugs as if it were obvious, because it is. "You are my legal responsibility at this moment. Children are not expected to pay for their own supplies. Until they are. Until you spend your entire summer sweeping floors and stocking shelves and lugging around heavy things for the corner store, or running errands for the workers at the mill for a pittance. When you're scraping together enough muggle money to barely cover second and third-handed things as young as 11, and you still end up having to borrow the professors' textbooks. Potter won't be doing any such thing. There's less opportunity for that kind of thing anyways now, none at all in Cokeworth. Maybe in the city, if you're lucky." He takes a deep breath, amends grudgingly. "Children should not have to pay for their own things, and you will not. I Potter is watching him strangely again, as if he's some new creature he's never seen before. "Thank you, sir." Flourish and Blots carries the Monster Book of Monsters, though the shopkeep looks harried and exhausted, prodding the books back with a stick in their jury-rigged cage. The book snaps at him when he tries to take it. Fortunately, he's dealt with this specific book before in his own research, and knows, from Hagrid himself years ago, that you only need to pet the spine of it to make it docile. Potter watches this with wonder, the sort of fresh, childish wonder of a boy still encountering new things. Severus pays for this book as well. They stop at Fortescue's. Florian delights at the sight of the boy who lived. He's mild and polite to Severus and seems surprised they're together. "I see you're getting ahead of your shopping for next term," he remarks. "What would you like?" "It's on the house for you, Mr. Potter." Harry's brows shoot up. "You, really don't have to do that, sir." "I insist," the man says. Severus takes the nearest seat, setting the books down and pulling his satchel into his lap to see if he has room within its expanded dimensions. He's kept the spell small. Large, uncontrolled ones have the minor risk of damaging and losing their contents, and putting wear on the physical bag over time. Potter and Fortescue discuss something. The man's hobby with medieval history, he thinks. Then he takes the boy's order, and you, Professor?" He looks up sharply upon being addressed. "Yes." "Would you like something as well?" He's startled by the offer. Initially, he intends to turn it down, but it has been a while. What's the harm? "Dutch chocolate, smallest serving you have." Florian looks a little surprised. "Very well." He does have enough room in his bag. He stows all the books except the Monster Book of Monsters, which he does not trust to behave. Potter is thumbing at the locket he was given. "I wonder if Ron and Hermione's summer is going less weird than mine. They both went on vacation," he adds, the last bit, belatedly. Snape hums. "Likely," he mutters. Though Molly's curse-breaking boy might get them in trouble along the way. Harry blinks owlishly at him. Do you know Mrs. Weasley?" He shrugs. "Yes, I've taught all of her sons and her daughter. Arthur, I've only run into briefly in the Ministry's research department. I'm sometimes brought in as a consultant." "Huh," Harry mutters, considering this. "What kind of research do you do consults on? I mean, you aren't a researcher." Snape stares at the boy. It's nice knowing his accomplishments are so buried that not even his current students know about them. For a moment, he questions his entire life's trajectory. What got him to such obscurity? But then he reminds himself it's his job to be as such. Spies do not draw attention to themselves. And it will be worth it in the end. It has to be. Potter is alive and breathing and asking him stupid questions, which is something he should probably be grateful for. I was the first person to obtain a dual mastery in potions in the dark arts at 20 years old. He draws. Most all of my spare waking moments are spent in research, and I typically attend several conferences each summer, and one in the winter months. To answer your less stupid question, the particularly nasty cursed objects they find, the obscure sort, things the Aurors aren't familiar with. Florian Fortescue brings them their ice cream, beaming at Harry and fielding Severus a wary smile. Potter is both enamored with the ice cream and suddenly very interested in him rather than his mother, which is incredibly discomfiting and not at all what he intended. What's the most dangerous thing you've helped them with? Severus hesitates, forcing himself to eat slowly for once. Ma isn't going to snatch it all away. She's dead. It's fine. Lucius and I once detangled a curse that would have, upon completion of a very messy and illogical set of triggers, degloved everyone within the building housing the object. Potter blinks owlishly. Glove, sir? Skin, Severus clarifies blandly. Would have peeled everyone like an orange. I still don't know why someone would do such a thing. It's thought the object was found in the estate of the caster, which means they would have also been affected. There was no clause within the spellwork to spare them. Potter looks a little green around the gills all of a sudden. Severus raises a brow, and he clears his throat. That's horrible. You asked the question. I did. It takes Potter a minute to tuck back into his ice cream. When he does, the boy opens his mouth, thinks better of it, swallows first, and asks, Why are you so... He gestures vaguely. Snape raises both of his eyebrows. You'll have to be more specific if you want an actual answer, Potter. What's the right word? Desensitized? I mean, that's awful, but you talk about it like it's the weather. He shrugs. I've seen worse. Muggleborn, with her eyes gouged out, hands cut open just so that the bones could be plucked out, severed from tendon and muscle, walking in on Bellatrix, her knife in a child's spine, gouging, the poor thing too agonized to make a sound, still alive, writhing, maggots pouring out of a traitor's mouth and tear ducts, his own body betraying him, joining in, unable to breathe, to move, to twitch. Locked in a trunk for hours, shoulders aching, legs feeling like they're breaking, Ma's tapping fingers. Have you learned your lesson yet, stupid boy? Unable to breathe. The Dark Lord's disappointed, lightly bemused face. Hand on his chin. Throw him in the oubliette you have in the basement for a little while. See if that rights him. We'll fish you out in a day or so, child. Clawing at the walls until his fingers bled. Lily's blank, lifeless corpse. Hardly cold, green eyes staring blankly upwards forevermore. He slams his occlumency shields down so hard they crack. Potter is staring at him again. Are you okay? Why would you ask? I'm fine. The response is rote, automatic. The boy looks shaken. He feels shaken, despite his shields, despite their cold comfort. Neither of them address it. Potter carries Monster Book of Monsters as they apparate back to his neighborhood. The rest of his text safe in Severus's satchel. His flue is still locked to only access Hogwarts, and even then he only uses it for emergencies. The Hound was gone this morning, but Severus still checks either side of the road. He steps up to his door and lays his hand on the panel. He must replace these wards tonight. They're fraying enough he doesn't know if they would stand up to. Potter's mental signature lights up with alarm, and he has about half a second to try and turn around before he's tackled through his own door. Cruel hands grip him, a shoulder bashes into his sternum, and his feet leave the ground before he feels the sturdy wood at his back give. He, his assailant, and the door bang to the ground with a shout and a snarl from... Snape stares up into mad gray eyes set into a harrowed, pale face, grapples with hands that go for his throat. Black? The name is tugged out between his teeth in shock. The man looks worse than he did on the news. Teeth rotting, bared in a hollow-faced snarl. He's still in his prison uniform, he smells of must and dirt, and his probably stolen overcoat is battered and ragged on his emaciated frame. The man overpowers his grip and decks him across the face so hard he sees stars. His wand is at his wrist beneath his robes, but it's the arm Black still gripping, keeping the holster from engaging. Black punches him again, and Severus feels something crack right underneath his eye, nausea rushing him as his ears ring. Fuck. Fuck. He'll be damned if he dies on his own bloody hallway floor. He snarls, trying to get his wrist from under Black's grip, but the bastard is strong despite his wasted frame, significantly larger than him by virtue of his height, and he doesn't let up even when Snape grabs a handful of greasy, matted hair and yanks. He thinks to go for the eyes or the throat next, but another punch busts his lip, and the third he catches, exhaling. The walls rattle, his hands spark. Black's gray eyes glint with momentary alarm before Snape pours everything into his hands and shoves him off, and out the doorway into the street. Potter, thankfully, is unharmed, watching with a blanched face and wide eyes. Inside, Snape bellows. Potter stays frozen. I won't have you dying on my bleeding watch, you idiot boy. Inside! He takes his shoulder and shoves him towards the door. He stumbles, but he doesn't go inside, and Snape feels true frustration bubbling inside of him as Black stands up. Where did he? Black has his wand. Snape throws a wandless Perdigo as Black lashes a curse his way. Something nonverbal and nasty, but not the killing curse, or even that combustion curse he was arrested for killing all those muggles with. Strange. He puts himself between Black and the boy. Black's mind seethes with a familiar hatred he recognizes intimately from his school days, but more than that, Snape realizes he's felt that hatred recently. The dog. You always were a bitch. I see you've taken that rather literally of late, Black. The man's eyes widen. He looks unhinged, feral, inhuman. His hands shake. How did you get out? He snarls, voice tremoring with rage. He jabs Severus's wand at him. You! He cries. You took the mark when we were kids! How did you get out and I didn't? 12 years! 12 years I've spent, and for what, when there's fucking Death Eaters walking around? His voice goes shrill. Don't think I didn't see you at the raids, you and Malfoy. We all knew, we just didn't have proof. How the hell did you get away with it? I was Dumbledore's man, Snape snarls. Unlike you. I was always his man, Sirius bellows, voice cracking, shaking violently. Then his face falls in confusion. How would you trick Albus Dumbledore? The wand lowers slightly, then raises with a sharp, steadying breath. Same way Pettigrew did. Must be. Old man isn't as infallible as he likes to think. The words come out like unhinged ramblings, but Snape stares at Black, ice water running down his back. What about Pettigrew? He asks harshly. Deflects another curse into the walk to his left. Harry makes a strangled sound. He killed Lily and James, betrayed them! You killed them! You were their keeper, Black, the boy's own godfather. Doubt wriggles in his mind, though. Why would Black bother lying to him of all people? For Potter's sake? What's his plan? Does he even have one? Black, he always had plans. The Marauders were many things, but they were never stupid. Rash and arrogant and malicious, yes, but never truly stupid. Black lunges at him with an animal sound, and Severus rakes his brains for a wandless spell to prevent a physical assault and comes up empty. He needs his damned wand back, much as he's loath to admit it. And he needs to brush up on wandless defense, clearly. They crash to the concrete, though this time he manages to control his own landing, get on top of Black, and return the fist to the face he'd gotten earlier with a sickening crack. Unfortunately, he can't stay that way for long. Diverting his focus to retrieving his wand leaves him open to getting turned over, and Black snaps his head against the concrete. Once. Twice. His ears ring again, vision swimming, his own wand in his face. A crack of red sends it skittering into the road. Stop! Harry bellows. Stop it! His wand is pointed at Black's face, a good enough distance away that he could cast before Black can take it from him. Get away from him! The both of them stare. Potter stares back, face pale and drawn, hands tremoring lightly. Harry! Harry! Black almost sounds consoling. This man is a Death Eater. You killed my parents! Pettigrew killed your parents! I only ever wanted the best for Lily and James. I'd have died for them. Pettigrew is dead, Harry argues. He's not! He's an animagus like me, a rat! He cut off his own finger and blew up all those muggles, Harry. I'd never hurt James. Never. This close, Severus can feel the truth of those words. He stares up at Black, feeling nauseous. 12 years for a crime he didn't commit. He did try to murder you, though, Severus thinks to himself, faintly incredulous. You're trying to kill my professor right now, Black, Harry says, a little hysterically. I don't know why I'm supposed to believe a word you say. Professor? Sirius asks. He even sits up, still sitting on him, the bastard, face slack with shock. At Hogwarts? While Black is distracted, Snape manages to look him in the eyes and slip into his mind. Black doesn't have time to get violent before he extracts the truth. The memory itself is hazy, unspooled by the Dementors, but it's otherwise intact. He's definitely telling the truth. Severus stares up at him, uncomprehending. I'm Dumbledore's man, he repeats. Have been since before they laid down the Fidelius. Sirius falls when he pushes the rangy mud off of him, standing shakily. His head aches and swims. He feels like he might vomit. You? You were the leak? Black squeaks. Everyone knew there was a spy in the Order. A few people, Minerva, Poppy, Molly, even knew his face. Dumbledore had set up a rotation for him to drop off information with. People the man trusted implicitly. No one else knew who, only that someone had defected and given them information to at least attempt to protect the Potters and the Longbottoms. The locations for raids, even the rescue opportunities for a few Muggleborns. He feels at the back of his head and his fingers come away tacky with blood. The front of his face fares no better. Sir, are you all right? Potter's voice cracks. He looks up, vision still struggling to focus. Will be, he rasps. Think I have a concussion. What do we do with him? Harry jabs his wand at Black. Should we notify the Ministry? No. He's telling the truth. Harry's wand falls to point at the ground, fingers slack. How do you know? Black snarls. Little Snivellus is a legilimens. Crawled into my head just now. Are you sure? Potter's voice breaks off. Severus has sat on the curb, or fallen, maybe. All he really knows is that his arse is on the curb and his hand is clutching the back of his head, vision swimming and stomach churning. Sir? Shite, Black mutters. He sees through his teetering vision as Black scoops up his wand out of the street, hears Potter move sharply. Black raises his hands peacefully. Calm down, pup. Help me get him inside. Harry's footsteps draw closer. Sir? I would have tried to kill him again by now if he were lying, he mutters. Trust him as far as I can throw him, but I doubt he's going to kill you, Potter.
Okay, good stuff. I really enjoyed that fight scene. And the way you read it, Lazarus, was just awesome.
I did not say legilimens correctly.
It's all right.
Okay, the tension was there.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this fic. I've been reading it when I actually managed to find some free time, and it's really fun.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had a lot of fun writing it. We've got plans until book 7, so it's gonna
Nice.
be a while.
Oh,
Yeah. What is your writing process like?
First of all, consume other media that gets the muse going, and then black out write for however long it takes to get a chapter done, and then pester Dragomir in Discord DMs until it is edited.
Oh,
We edit together over VC, and Drago mainly just yells at me about typos and things.
Someday I'm going to teach you to spell.
Never!
very Snape-like.
I also can't spell. I can feel that.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible speller.
But I do outlines, but not very concrete ones, because if they're concrete, I write myself into a corner real fast. This is the product of a lot of previous unfinished projects that I was not satisfied with because I didn't, I guess, have the writing chops to get it done before. This is the first one that I've gotten into a state that I'm actually really proud of.
great.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I've been, I don't have a lot of time to read because of what I do, but, I've tried to keep up with it and I don't remember. I think I'm at like chapter, I couldn't tell you a number. They just, no spoilers, but something big just happened and it's been a really good fic and I've really, really liked it. I like the pairing a lot, obviously, and I like the way that you write them together, so.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Oh, I love them. They're so silly because they're
Mhm.
both, neither of them function ever. Not one day. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what big thing happened. Oh no, it is a massive fix. So there's a lot of big things that have happened.
I feel like since we have established that it's a pairing. They just like had their encounter is where I
Oh,
was.
the
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah.
So chapter 11. Okay.
Okay, I thought it was 11, but I didn't want to say that, and you were like, I've only released 9 chapters," and then I look like an asshole, but
No, I've written 37 and we're on 31. So,
oh, and I did want to say that reading that actually inspired me to draw a little bit of Snack at the end of last year.
oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Send it to me.
Sure thing, a couple of things, yeah.
Yeah, that's something we can link to,
Yeah.
as well as all the stories we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, speaking of stories, I'm probably going to go back and redo some of the illustrations for this fic that I've done, because my art style continuously evolves faster than I am able to keep up with.
Oh, sure. I really enjoy your illustrations, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just all really good.
I think my favorite one is the one where I did 2 for 1 chapter by accident.
Oh,
The one with Margot and Snape, and then the Great Hall.
yeah, awesome. One of Snape's mantras is, "I'm fine." And he's not.
No, that is I don't know, I feel like it's kind of relatable. Like, I don't experience chronic pain myself, but I did go through a chronic illness for 6 months. And that was kind of my thing, was I'm fine. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Don't 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 do that. It's okay. And it's really a maladaptive, like kind of heartbreaking thing to see from the outside, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I was reading it, I sort of assumed that you must have had that experience because, like, I've got a chronic illness, and, like, that's a very, that's definitely something that you kind of just have to do in order to get through the things that somebody who doesn't have that experience just kind of has to take for granted.
Yeah, I had chronic bronchitis for 6 months
Ooh, that's
where I
rough.
just I could not breathe. It just horrible hacking cough all of the time, every single day. Couldn't sleep. And my dad, who has since passed away, dealt with degenerative disc disease in his back and abuse of pain medication all throughout my life. So I have seen firsthand how chronic pain affects people and how it affects the people they love and just how you live through it and how you keep going day after day. So I've kind of written through that experience in the fic.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that like I have Crohn's disease and I definitely project that onto Snape when I'm right. Even if I'm not explicitly doing that, it's always kind of like in my head that like, oh, he's sick and in pain.
Yeah, it just happens.
Yeah, for sure.
His whole life is kind of like that. I mean, he has to work through just unimaginable levels of mental load and somehow keep going. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. The whole point of Godfathers is to one, get him to snap, to get that to finally be too much, and then to get past that instead of just dying like he did in the books. So stay tuned.
It's what he deserves.
Well, we all know he really lived,
Yeah.
so.
Of course.
True. He is in Florida on a flamingo floaty.
Yes. Did you want to talk about the Jenya storyline at all?
Oh, I mean, I was gonna mention it, but Snape is definitely transmasculine in the story. He's also demi-romantic, and writing both of those is always really fun and really interesting. I am just demi in general and also transmasc, so I don't know. I had to respond to a comment to this actually a while ago. There's a lot of them where it's like, "Oh, I didn't imagine this," or "I didn't think I'd like this, but I like it." And it's like one of them was like, "I really didn't think I'd like trans Snape, but you sold me." And I had to respond like, hey man, he's just the same guy. He's just got a really small dick. Like, like that's it. And a few bit different trauma, slightly different trauma, and that's all. His story is so easy to write that into. There's literally nothing I have to do except make it happen, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll also say that that also inspired me to draw a little bit of that.
Oh yeah?
Like, I mean, I don't want to sound like, oh, I was going crazy over your fic or anything. I just happened to read it right before I did Snapetober in November. So I drew a lot of Snape. And so I kind of pulled from like a lot of different directions.
No, that's really cool though. Actually, my favorite commenter, who I think is just very busy now, was giving me like essays. Like, if you go through the comments in the fic on like the first few chapters, there's like 7-paragraph long conversations between me and one person.
That's awesome.
And that is the best thing that could ever happen. Like, there's no obsessing over someone's fic. It's just that's what fandom's for, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's very true. Like we all kind of feed off of each other. Like I'm not much of a writer. And like I'd love to be able to like write fics and everything. It just like I haven't been able to get myself to do that. So, drawing is what I do. And when I read somebody's interpretation and like really like something, it really makes me want to, try to kind of portray that narrative visually, I guess.
No, I get it. Yeah, that's kind of how I am with both mediums. But I got into writing really early. I published my first fic when I was 9 years old, so
Wow.
Yeah.
it wasn't good at all. But
But you did it.
Well, but I mean, that's how learning any skill is. You have to do it badly before you do it well.
precisely, one day I will hammer this into Drago's head.
Shut up.
But
You can't make me.
I can. I'm gonna drive to your house.
You cannot outlast me in a battle of endurance. I think you should have learned that by now.
Uh, but the one thing that really kind of changes in the fic because of the gender stuff is the Neville scene with the boggart,
Oh.
which I've had in my head for years, and I'm pretty sure it's currently published.
I think so.
And it's just, yeah, I was really fascinated by how people took that, and it seemed to have a good reception.
Yeah, I'll have to find some time and catch up to what you have posted so far.
Yeah, we're resolving one of the first biggest arcs in the fic in the next few chapters. I won't say how, but we are.
Nice.
And then we have to move on to the next one. And honestly, it's a sprint to the finish line now for the fic, because we're already past the length of Prisoner of Azkaban, and we're getting in like the canon, like train track side along that I do, right up to where the book really speeds up and then just finishes.
Hmm.
Wow.
And then we move into the summer of book 4.
Awesome. You're talking about this, and I'm really kind of like relating to it in my head because, like, I do a comic that kind of goes through the events of the book, but is also kind of obviously like an alternate kind of story. And, just that process of reviewing the material and deciding where you're going to take it. Of course, as you move along, it gets farther and farther from the text and more your own story. So I think, it'll be fun to like read that and see that.
Yeah, it's really fun. I've already decided on the shatter point, I think.
Ooh.
And I won't tell you what exactly it is, but it's in Order of the Phoenix.
Oh.
Nice.
The point where the canon plot completely goes off the rails because there's no saving it.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean by that because like I have like the same kind of thing in my head where it's just like, well, at this point, it is a completely different story.
Yeah, there comes a point where you can't, like, what I like to imagine is you do this thing where you're like on a train and you're going away and then you push a lever and it goes off and then it comes back on. And
Yeah.
eventually you cannot come back on.
That's not how trains work.
It can be. It's how my trains work. I will make all trains work like that.
I'm just giving you all the credit, just assuming you know how trains work. So
It's my responsibility to pick holes in your metaphors.
Dragomir hates the Lazarus.
Oh.
Dragomir kicked Lazarus like football.
Oh, who's watching the national championship this weekend?
Is that football?
Yes. Well, Notre Dame versus Ohio State College.
Oh.
Oh.
I'm the wrong kind of gay person to know anything about that.
I am the only gay in the world who also likes football.
Oh
One day you'll find your people.
yeah.
I've encountered a few.
Yeah, they exist.
They do.
I've had several who like soccer, but not American football.
Hmm.
Someday.
Uh,
Yeah,
were we?
I live in Alabama, so
Oh, my
Oh.
condolences.
Uh-huh.
but yeah, I forget what was happening.
Well, we were talking about like the point at which your story is going to totally.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you know the ship, and you know that I'm doing all 7 books, and there isn't a major archive warning there, you know something has to
Right.
change.
Exactly. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people are gonna like it because, oh, warning, anyone who reads the fic and listens to this, if you go back after the accumulation of this arc that I'm publishing now, the end of it, and you read the whole fic over again, there is so much foreshadowing.
Nice.
Oh,
That'll be fun.
Like there's a lot. There's foreshadowing in chapter like 1 through 10 for events in chapter 30 through 40. So,
oh, nice.
Well, and I'm really excited about this project also because, like, I feel like after the last book came out, a lot of the fics for a long time were compliant with the seventh book, and I can certainly understand that. I just think it's exciting to see more people diverge from that a lot sooner in the story again. That we're seeing more of that again, and yeah, like I'm excited to see that.
yeah, the seventh book is almost fundamentally incompatible with Godfathers.
Hmm.
Because Godfathers it's a love letter to the idea that children should not have to solve adult problems in the way that Harry Potter does.
I like that.
It's not a YA
Right,
series, it's an adult
right.
series. Like Harry Potter is YA, which is why he has to do everything. But in
Exactly.
this, he has the support system to rely on other people and for other people to fight the big bad and help him on that journey. And I don't know. I feel like the way I do it is people are gonna like it. So
That's really interesting to me because like it's definitely something that I thought of. Harry Potter is for kids and teenagers and young adults. So of course the kids have to solve the problems, but we as kind of transformative creators of fiction, we don't have to, do that. We're writing in a different genre. And so it's
yeah,
kind of okay
yeah.
for us to
I
like,
don't even know what I'd call Godfathers, but it's definitely not the same genre.
yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Oh, no,
Oh
this,
no. Go ahead.
I think this is one of the things I really love about works in progress is just seeing where they go.
Yeah.
And, it's one thing when you get to a really dramatic scene and then you're like, oh, where are they going to go? Or just flipping to the next chapter.
I mean, I think I told Kat before we recorded that I was excited about this fic being on the episode. So sorry if I'm monopolizing and asking a lot of questions and stuff.
Oh, no, it's great stuff.
I love questions. I could yap for days, honestly.
I can verify that.
Ah, ugh. But yeah.
Like, I feel like I post all the time on my like Harry Potter Tumblr blog that a healthy fandom environment like really requires people to kind of get really creative and really indulgent. And I think, like I said, I feel like I'm doing in some ways kind of a similar project. So like when I see something like what you're doing, that makes me feel like, oh, there's something very enriching in the fandom environment.
Oh, that's so nice. For a long time, been a big supporter of you need to kill like the cop or the cringe
Hmm.
police or whatever the fuck in
Yes.
your head. Because if you don't, everything that you make is gonna be watered down and shitty. And I'm sorry, but that's how it is. I do think in the Half-Blood Prince equivalent for Godfathers, we are going to lose some people because I am being indulgent and I am gonna make a plot line that a lot of people might not like and a lot of other people will like. It's gonna be polarizing, I'm certain. But I'm gonna do it because if I don't, I know that what I write in its place is not gonna be good and it's not gonna have any heart.
Yeah, you've got to tell the story that you want to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to take those big swings sometimes for it to be interesting. I mean, when I look at, movies I want to watch, I'd try not to pay too much attention to the like Rotten Tomatoes score because if it's 100%, that means like nobody found anything too offensive or whatever. But it's something that's polarizing is like maybe like it'll really connect with some people and some people didn't really like it that much, but that means they took some swings.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
find those stories a lot more compelling.
Yeah, I don't think any of my favorite movies ever have like a perfect Rotten Tomato score or
No.
anything close to that. Not a once.
Very few films do.
Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
I mean,
Mhm.
one of my favorite movies is Thor, The Dark World.
You almost said Thor Ragnarok.
I know, I was trying to say both. One of my least favorite is Thor Ragnarok, which is against every public opinion ever, almost. So,
Oh yeah.
Interesting. Well, we've had a great discussion about this wonderful fic. So,
yeah, thank you so much.
oh, thank you. I'm glad we were able to do it. Okay. The next story is Meet Me at the Checkpoint by Nocturn. And it's read by Snail. And it's another wonderful fic. So let's listen in.
Meet me at the checkpoint. By Nocturn. Summary. She wakes with a gasp in the hospital wing. The first thing she registers is that the ragged gash across her chest has reopened, pulsing with the same searing pain as when she sustained it at the end of 5th year. The second thing, Granger, try to take slower breaths. I'll have your next dose of healing potion ready soon. Is that Severus Snape is somehow alive. Or the one where Hermione gets stuck in an Edge of Tomorrow-style time loop that resets back to summer 1996 each time she dies. Previously, after the Battle of Hogwarts, Hermione is cursed by Thorfinn Roll. She wakes up in the infirmary 2 weeks after the Battle at the Department of Mysteries, only to repeatedly live through the events of the Second War. So far, she has died 3 times. From Chapter 4, Round 4. Hermione wakes in the hospital wing, biting the inside of her cheek so hard it bleeds. Fuck, I thought we'd stopped the bleeding. Oh, you're awake. Snape clears his throat. Gods, she missed him. She wants to smile, but blood wells in her mouth. I have your next dose of healing potion ready. If you need. He summons a flannel and then spells it to hover just under her chin. She cleans her face and vanishes it all. Thank you. Snape ignores her gratitude and hands her a vial of healing potion. What's in this? She asks, drinking it down and trying to detect the elements within it around the metallic tang of blood. Dittany, elderflower, crushed boomberry seeds, among many others. Why do they work against Dolahov's curse? And do they have any temporally stabilizing components? You've been unconscious for nearly 2 weeks, aside from delirious raving about reckless behavior and something about a debrief. Perhaps you should allow your mind time to rest before jumping headlong into advanced areas of research. Perhaps. I was serious about that debrief, though. Let me know when you're ready. In the morning, Hermione begins her list of reference materials again and includes the ones from the nearby university. When Snape arrives to check on her, she hands it to him along with another request to debrief. If we must, he says, turning back to survey the array of vials on the counter. You'll need these every 4 hours. Yes, I remember, Hermione cuts in. Snape whirls around and glares. I've actually been through this before, she explains. Dolahov's curse seems to have trapped me in some strange sort of time loop. Maybe approaching it this way will make him more likely to believe her. What's strange about it? Whatever she expected him to respond with, this was not it. Sorry? You said some strange sort of time loop. Time loops by nature are strange, so how is this one strange in particular? And how is it only sort of a time loop? Snape's sharp gaze pierces her as he approaches, furrowing his brow. Hermione blinks and gathers her thoughts. Well, it's strange because I'm not sure how it works. It takes more to end than simply falling asleep or leaving a confined area to reset. And it's only sort of one because I'm not sure its limiting condition is time itself or... She trails off before summarizing. Basically, it only ends when I die. At this, Snape only raises his eyebrows. And what I'm trying to understand is why I keep ending up back here. She takes a breath. And is there any chance of fixing it? Temporal stability affects more than just curses. It's working always in the background with potions absorption and metabolism, whether for healing or for harm. He paces a bit at the foot of her bed, then continues. There appears to have been some catalyst with the curse. I haven't seen it do anything other than kill people before. Reassuring. The first time I died, She trails off, wondering how much she should reveal this time. It was because Thorfinn Roll cursed me with Dolahov's spell. I assume that's what activated, or reactivated, everything. She doesn't mention the battle, the crumbling castle, the book on the windowsill. She doesn't mention the vow or the horrible gut-wrenching fall in Gringotts. Snape purses his lips, brow furrowing in thought. It's not unheard of to have something dormant that's activated by a second phase. potions suspended in lipid spheres, for example, that dissolve when they come into contact with enzymes in certain parts of the intestine, or a capsule that's broken with a certain spell. I'll have to think on this more. It would be nice to have a time turner, to be able to go back and observe what happened in the DOM, if nothing else, Hermione muses. That was my first thought as well, but they've all been destroyed. Snape's voice is grim. I suppose we'll have to find some other way to study it then, Hermione concedes. Oh. The lab! I need it much more than Slughorn. What lab? Hermione grins. Don't play coy with me. I've been using it for months now. Snape gives a begrudging nod. And why on earth my previous self ever let an unqualified student take over my one safe haven in this forsaken place? It's not about qualification. It's about necessity. I failed in plenty of things, and I intend to fail some more, but I'll learn. And you won't have to spend the year knowing Slughorn's pedicure basin has taken up residence where your high-end lab equipment used to be. Snape twists his mouth in a strange expression that appears halfway between a wince and a smirk. You could kick me out at any time, she offers. Oh, can I? I'm allowed to ask students to leave my own personal space? That's very generous, Granger. Oh, sod off. You know what I meant, she says, exasperated, then adds, Professor. Snape's face is expressionless as he leaves her, but she feels cheerful all the same. She stays up late into the night, sketching out new ideas for her research, and falls asleep with more questions to explore. Her dreams that night are fitful, full of the memories of the dead. And then, Snape's words ring clearly in her swimming thoughts. Temporal stability affects more than just curses. It's working always in the background with potions absorption and metabolism. She jolts fully awake and catches sight of the healing potion on her bedside table. Whether for healing or for harm. Of course. Poison. That's how he must have killed Bellatrix last time. That would explain the bruising and the sudden, unknown illness. Bellatrix was right to have been suspicious. So what does that mean for this time? She drifts back to sleep, unease nestling alongside her. Snape greets her late in the evening the next day with a gruff nod and slumps into the chair next to her bed, a messy stack of parchment in one hand. I dredged these up from the lab that I still can't believe I told you about before. He rifles through the stack and pulls out a couple sheaves to pass to her. She squints as she studies the scrawl and ink stains. Her eyes feel scratchy, and she's sure to have dark circles beneath them. Delayed activation spells and how to block them, she reads. Listed are references for methods for multiple disciplines. Charms, defense, potions, naturally. Even divination. From a few years ago, when we were brainstorming how Sirius Black was getting into the castle, he explains, we'd thought it would be some sort of concealment spell on a time delay that allowed him through the castle wards. Hermione flips back and forth between the parchments, mind reeling with the new paths opening before her. And yet, where was this the last time? She half asks, half demands. Immediately, she feels wrong-footed. Snape has no idea what was there the last time, and she can't exactly hold him accountable for actions he has yet to take, or not take. It's been in the filing cabinet since 1994, he says without inflection. Right, sorry. I know it's not your fault, but this would have been helpful the last time, she says, attention already turning back to the curious divination references. Absent-mindedly, she wordlessly spells her hair up into a bun and secures it with her wand, her other hand turning the parchment over again. She looks up to find Snape staring at her and catches the briefest glimpse of outright surprise before his expression neutralizes. What? He stands and doesn't answer before making for the exit. A minute later, and Hermione's chasing after him in the halls, bare feet slapping against cold stone. She hopes to all the gods he's not going to Dumbledore, because if he is, she might as well stop this timeline right fucking now. She skids to a halt at the top of a staircase, breathing heavily and feeling lightheaded. Do you have a death wish, Granger? Snape's footsteps are quiet as he ascends within view. That depends on if, she pants. You're planning to tell Dumbledore any of this. Her vision begins to go dark at the edges, spots of color taking over the middle. You're not supposed to be up at all, let alone sprinting, he chastises. He reaches her and waves his wand toward the hospital wing. A moment later, a vial of her healing potion sails into his hand. She manages to drink it, then she slumps against the wall and slides to a seat, waiting for her strength to return. Why did you leave so suddenly? Why don't you want the headmaster finding out? He asks as though he hadn't heard her. Because he made me take an unbreakable vow the first timeline and it got me killed. Figures. I'm not much better, though, seeing as I got you killed the next time. Snape raises an eyebrow. Oh, fuck. I should probably tell you everything that happened, shouldn't I? I am sorely tempted to leave you here in recompense, but I suppose I should take you back to the hospital wing so you can explain. Debriefing fully takes 2 hours. It goes by surprisingly quickly, with Snape only interrupting to give Hermione a blood replenisher and ask a couple clarifying questions before seating himself back in the chair beside her bed. She marvels at how easy it is to adapt to his dark eyes never leaving her face, his attention fully hers. The more I do this, the longer the explanation is going to take, Hermione muses in conclusion. Perhaps in the future legitimacy might be a workaround. Snape gives a non-committal hum and then furrows his brow in thought. So, I need to determine what I used to successfully poison Bellatrix and where she relocated her Gringotts vault contents. I'm still not sure why the vault was emptied in the first place. I'd assume she was suspicious enough that someone would come after it. That's something we could test, or we could just follow what happened last time. Hermione mulls this over, but, like I mentioned, last time did get you killed. You say that like it's a bad thing. Hermione glares. What, you're the only one who gets to have a death wish? Snape doesn't wait for her response before recentering their discussion. I think avoiding the unbreakable vow with Narcissa was what triggered her suspicion, so that's the first step I'll take. If avoiding the vow is the first step, Hermione isn't at all opposed. You should get some rest, Snape says. His tone is flat, but the words are uncharacteristically kind. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Again. Snape doesn't laugh, and Hermione glances at the clock. It's well after midnight. So should you, she says, trying not to let her gaze linger on the shadows beneath his eyes. He rubs a hand down the side of his face and rises. Tomorrow, if you're well enough, we can get a head start on preparing the lab. Hermione sleeps, ironically, like the dead, and when she awakens, the familiar jar of healing ointment is next to her potions. She replays the scenes from the previous day in her mind until she arrives at the moment when she found Snape staring at her. She'd just been securing her bun, and her arm had been raised, and he must have seen the scar from Bellatrix's knife. A mixture of relief and dread climbs up her back as she contemplates the opportunity, and the danger, this could bring them. So he can see her. So he believes her. That's what it means, right? She spreads the ointment over the scar and wonders if she keeps this up long enough, will it disappear? I'm bringing this with, Snape says as he enters brusquely, holding up a small crate of vials which look to be more healing potions. Hermione sets the ointment aside and rises, fighting the dizziness that washes over her. The walk to the dungeons is slow, and she can sense that Snape is used to a brisk pace, but deliberately stopping at points to allow her to rest. They reach the dark corridor, and Snape steps aside, no doubt in a makeshift sort of test to see if she really does know where it is. Hermione skims her fingers along the wall, searching for the familiar tug of magic and confirming with the spiderweb-shaped crack in the stone. For a foolish moment, she wonders if the castle magic can sense that she's been here before. But only cold stone meets her hand. Snape presses his hand to the wall beside her again, and she fights the urge to lean into the heat around him. His magic, as he adds her to the ward, still makes her skin tingle, and she shivers as it courses over her. Beside her, Snape clears his throat and steps away. The rocks shift, and the doorway materializes, and together they step through the threshold. The rest of Hermione's recovery is spent alternating between the hospital wing, library, and lab. The storage area is full of boomberries, and Hermione's head is full of ideas. Snape is absent most of the time, and Hermione tries to embrace the strange peace she had found so easily in the lab during the last timeline. It's not as if she misses his presence, even if she keeps a running list of questions to ask him at the earliest opportunity, even if she can't help but become transfixed by his hands as he works, even if it's time to go. I'll see you at the start of term. The words jolt Hermione out of her thoughts, and she nods, wondering why she's feeling so homesick as she packs her things away. To fill you in on what you might be missing from the last timeline, apparently you like scraps of parchment as a means of communication. Less effort than a Patronus. Hermione stares at the message on the lab table and wonders if it's too much, too swatty, too familiar, too... She leaves before she can change her mind. Seeing the Weasleys again feels like pulling an old photograph out from the shoebox beneath her childhood bed. Will greeting them always feel this familiar, this nostalgic? She spends nearly 30 minutes on the phone with her parents and stops in the chemist to buy dental floss before letting Molly side-along apparate her to the burrow. "You look like you could use a glass of wine," Hermione says to Fleur when they find themselves in the kitchen later. "I hid this bottle so the twins would not steal it," Fleur says with a conspiratorial grin. Hermione grabs 2 goblets and beckons for Fleur to follow her outside, remembering how Molly had interrupted them the last time. They settle on a garden bench, and Fleur uncorks the wine to fill each goblet to the brim, then downs what remains from the bottle itself. Hermione reassures her that dinner will taste better than it looks, and Fleur jokes about the British food upsetting Tonks, and then, "I don't know how I'm going to get married," Fleur says suddenly. Hermione sits up. "This is much different than the last time." "You don't have to get married, Fleur," she says gently. Fleur looks at her and then away again, leaning back against the bench and staring up at the stars. "You're the only person who said that to me," she says. "Entend." She clinks their glasses together, and they drink in silence for several minutes. "I sometimes wonder if the only reason Bill proposed was because I let my guard down, let him see me without suppressing my Vila magic." Hermione takes a slow sip of wine and waits for her to continue. "I worry that it is not me he loves, but how I make him feel." "I hope not," Hermione says, not knowing what else she can offer in support. "Moi aussi. But how is one to tell?" Fleur muses. She drains her wine glass. "Perhaps this is all just silly. How is it you say in English? Cold feet?" "There you are," Molly calls from the open kitchen door. "And now it is time for more British food," Fleur says, rising and helping Hermione to her feet. Her face is grim and determined, like she's going into battle, and perhaps she's fighting demons of her own. Harry and Ron look even younger in the morning glow, and Hermione realizes they're the same age. It's just that she's the one who is getting older. This strange knowledge carries her through her owl results, Diagon Alley, and back to Hogwarts on the train, where she insists on Harry staying put. "I believe you," she whispers as the train pulls into Hogsmeade Station. "You don't need to prove anything right now." When she descends onto the platform, she catches a flash of blonde hair and races to catch the door of the carriage. "Luna," she says, catching her breath. How was the rest of your summer?" "Fine, I suppose. Now what did you really want to ask me?" Her words would be harsh coming from anyone else, but Luna is just honest with her. Hermione vows to herself to be the same. "I wanted to know more about the Death Chamber in the Department of Mysteries." "You and me both," Luna muses. "You know I heard my mother in there?" Hermione hesitates. Honesty. She can do this. "Yes." She takes a breath. "You told me." "When?" Luna asks, neither surprised nor expectant. "In another time." "Oh, that makes sense. Had we figured anything out yet, during that time?" Hermione smiles sadly. "No." Luna studies her with her large blue eyes. "You look wiser, Hermione. Maybe you'll figure it out." Whether she means the Death Chamber, her time loop, or life or death in general, Hermione isn't sure. The carriage arrives, and she watches Luna float away into the castle. Her dorm bed pillow still smells the same, and Crookshanks still likes to hog at least half of it. It's going to be all right, she tells him. At least for him, it always is. Maybe his contentment is one of the patches that always stays on the quilt. Early in the morning, when she can't sleep, Hermione finds herself in the lab and finds a torn-off corner of parchment in place of the missive she left. I don't need to be filled in on my own personal tastes, Granger. Like is a generous estimation. Have you tried adding diluted dittany? She beams as she pockets it. Will do. The dark arts are many, varied, ever-changing, and eternal, Snape says as he strides into the first defense lesson of the year. There's something comforting in his words, even if the idea of eternity settles heavy on Hermione's shoulders. Some things are constant, even if the only constant is change. She volunteers to pair up with Harry as her nonverbal dueling partner, who looks utterly gobsmacked when Snape rolls his eyes and agrees. And then she's utterly gobsmacked when, after 25 minutes, he hits her with a successful nonverbal petrificus and she thuds ungracefully to the floor. She's still sore from the fall during potions class, and in a silent apology, Harry slides his copy of Advanced Potion Making between them, giving her unrestricted access to teenage Snape's notes. They both brew a perfect draught of living death, and Hermione hopes that joining the Slug Club will grant her access to more boomberries. Thinking like a Slytherin, Snape says when Hermione tells him her plan at the first office hours session of the year. I suppose all I needed was a bit of wisdom, she says. Come to think of it, how would one be sorted as an adult and not a naive 11-year-old? Perhaps the next time she visits Dumbledore, she'll swipe the hat and ask it. But that would mean having to visit Dumbledore again, which is not a thrilling prospect. How's the research going otherwise? About the same as last time, Hermione admits, slumping into the chair across from him. It's the same vanishing cells, the same boomberry stabilizer, the same problems, and not much else despite an extra few texts of knowledge and Snape's suggestions for additional tests to run. Snape doesn't seem fazed, however. Sometimes dead ends are part of the process. Perhaps you could ask one of your new Slug Club connections for advice? Fuck. Networking. The thought makes Hermione's stomach churn. I'd rather die dances on the tip of her tongue, but then she realizes that dying won't actually solve this problem. I think, she says instead, I'll just work on the Horcrux problem instead. Saying the word out loud still feels like airing a dirty secret, even when she'd told Snape everything in the hospital wing. Satisfied, she rises from the chair and nods. Until next time. You're acting like this is a regular occurrence, Snape says warily. For me, maybe, she says and shrugs, but you have the joy of experiencing only a few of these meetings each time. Snape merely frowns in response. For the next one, you usually invite me into your sitting room, she supplies helpfully, and then turns away before she can see his expression.
I really love this story.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to read the rest of it, but just this snippet was just so intriguing. I mean, I love a good mystery and I love messing with time, so.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah, it's over 13 rounds, I think.
Wow.
And certain things are always there as she wakes up. And I don't know, I love sexy potions talk. It just tickles my left brain.
I love the Hermione characterization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's really very matter of fact. This is a complete story, and I still like Works in Progress because it was so fun to be hanging by a thread for each chapter. One thing that they do is they end up going to Malfoy Manor to find a Horcrux, and it's full of booby traps for Muggleborns. And there's always the risk of being found by a Death Eater. So it's very nail-biting. I don't know. I just really enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think what I love about mysteries is like the suspense, like you don't know. You really have to just keep going to find out what's happening next. And I really like how inquisitive she is. And I think they kind of share that characterization. And I can see them really starting to connect in that way. I thought it was really cool. I definitely want to read the rest of it.
Oh, yeah.
I love a good time loop.
Oh, yeah.
That's always like a really interesting scenario, and especially like
Mhm.
as you go through the different loops, like seeing what's the same, what's different, like that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a really cool concept. I love all time travel fuckery. I have like
Hmm
3 of those in my whips.
Yeah, definitely recommend it. Okay, the next one is a snary. It's called He Who Lives More Lives Than One by Witcraft, and it's read by our own Masao.
He Who Lives More Lives Than One by Writcraft. Summary. Harry is in trouble again. When immortality is forced upon him, there is only one person who can help: Severus Snape, the wizard who refuses to die. Previously, Harry has located the supposedly dead Severus Snape in an abandoned pub in Hogsmeade. With the help of some Felix Felicius, he has convinced Snape to speak with him, but Harry has to wait until Snape finishes his brewing. It takes 2 hours and 35 minutes for Snape to finish his work. Harry knows because he spends most of the time staring at a magical clock behind Snape's head that makes an annoying ping at the turn of each hour. By the time Snape finally puts his quill back in its pot and closes his book, the tug and twist in Harry's stomach has intensified. His senses heightened in a way he still finds peculiar. He licks his lips, trying not to focus on the light thud of Snape's pulse. The rustle of robes, the soapy scent with the barest hint of sweat beneath it, with a shudder that's part pleasure, part frustration. Harry presses his lips together in a firm line. Now can we talk? Harry stands and moves to the bar, rummaging through the shelves before finding a bottle of damson wine. Can we open this? If you must. Snape slowly unbuttons his robes, sending them into the wardrobe with a flick of his wand. Mercifully, he's fully clothed underneath, dressed in fitted black trousers and a casual shirt with an unfussy, partially open neckline and ruffled cuffs. If alcohol is required for this news of yours, I prefer ale. Harry grabs a bottle of London Porter from behind the bar and opens it with a quick swish of his wand when Snape nods in affirmation. He pours himself a small glass of damson wine and tries not to think about how it looks like the contents of his hip flask burning a hole in his pocket. He brings his drink and the bottle of ale over to the living quarters, where Snape settles on the armchair, leaving the lumpy sofa to Harry. Are you ever planning to let the rest of the world know you're alive? Unlikely. Snape takes a swig of his beer before putting the bottle down and pressing the tips of his fingers together in a steeple as he watches Harry. I assume from your cryptic comments earlier, you are not here to discuss my life, however. Not really. Harry pushes a hand through his hair, wondering how to start. I'm not an Auror anymore. I'm aware. Snape inclines his head. I remain up to date on the news, and that was quite the story. You teach at Hogwarts now, correct? Yeah. Knowing that Snape has followed news about Harry makes his body warm. Defense. Does that bother you? Why on earth would it bother me? Snape gives Harry a nasty smile. I do hope the position isn't still cursed. I'm starting to think it might be, Harry mutters. He brushes his fingers over the flask in his pocket, steeling himself. Something happened to me before I left the Aurors. It changed everything. I see. Something unreadable passes over Snape's features, a flicker across his otherwise neutral contemplation. I can only assume you were somehow to blame. Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Harry glares at Snape. There's something constant and familiar about the way his assumptions rankle, the flash of fire and fight that Snape always brings out in him. Are you going to listen? I might as well. I have nothing better to do this evening. Snape sounds as though he has plenty of better things to do, looking pointedly at his clock. I don't know why I'm here. Despite his earlier happiness at finding Snape alive, over 2 hours of sitting around and gnawing hunger has left Harry short-tempered. He inwardly curses himself for thinking Severus Snape of all people might be the solution to Harry's pointy little problem. I can't imagine you're going to be interested in helping after it nearly killed you to brew Remus a few lousy doses of wolfsbane. Harry knows he said the wrong thing by the way Snape tenses, and the air in the room gets hot and electric. Snape's eyes flash with fury, and he slams his beer down, getting to his feet and yanking Harry into a standing position. You know nothing, Snape snarls at Harry, giving him a light shake. Willful, impertinent child. How dare you come into my home, infiltrate my solitude, and breach my wards to sit and drink my wine, spouting ill-informed opinions and making judgments. I've heard enough. Snape shoves past Harry and strides to the trapdoor. He pulls it open, the anger rolling off him in waves. The power of his magic in the strange, dark space thrums through Harry as he tries to hold himself steady despite the wobble in his legs. All the exertion from before and the emotional tumult of sitting around staring at Snape has drained him. Not to mention the fact that he hasn't eaten properly in weeks. He really needs his flask, but there's no way he's doing that with Snape gawking at him. With a groan, Harry realizes he's in trouble when the dum-da-dum of Snape's heartbeat grows louder than the words he yells at Harry, spittle flying from between his narrow lips. His breath is hot and ale-sour, the calluses of his skin sliding over his wand accompanying the deep, pulsing power of his magic that flows through his veins. Snape might be several feet away, but Harry can feel the path of his blood, the way it pumps through his body. He can taste Snape's skin, his mouth. He can almost imagine his tongue against Snape's neck and the mottled scars that web along it. "Shut up, will you? I can't think." Harry clenches his fists and moves as far away from Snape as he can. He situates himself behind the bar, clutching onto the surface to stop himself from following his bodily urge to get close enough to Snape for the sustenance he so badly needs. "I didn't ask you to find me," Snape points out. His voice is icy and trembles with barely contained vitriol. "You continue to display the kind of reckless arrogance that your father—" "I was attacked." Harry can't bear to let Snape finish his sentence and cuts him off in his tracks, his chest heaving as he forces out the words. "Rookwood and Caro, they burned Grimmauld Place to the ground." That stops Snape at last. His mouth drops open and he stares at Harry for one heated moment that feels like an eternity, their labored breathing loud in the silence. Eventually he drops the trapdoor to the cellar with a slam and slices his wand through the air, sending a bolt of light across the room where it lands on the wall, leaving a black mark. If that were true, you would be dead by now. Am I conversing with a ghost? There's a bitter, dangerous edge to Snape's voice. "Come now, Potter. Don't play me for the fool. You're as much flesh and blood as I am." "Not exactly," Harry winces, wishing Snape would shut up about blood. He looks up and meets Snape's furious gaze. "I'm not dead. More undead." Despite the fact that there's nothing funny about the situation, Harry lets out a strangled laugh. "I call it my pointy little problem." "Undead?" Snape purses his lips, his knuckles white from clutching his wand so tightly. "You're, vampire, apparently." The word is heavy on Harry's tongue. It tastes like curses and dark arts. Caro cast a spell and it got through my shield. Kingsley reckons it's an ancient magic. I suppose unforgivables get a bit boring when you've been flinging them around at everyone for years. Foolish. Idiotic. Snape trails off, his fury rendering him speechless. He pinches the bridge of his nose, his voice muffled. "When did you last drink?" "I had that damson wine about 10 minutes. "Blood, you insufferable brat. When did you last drink blood?" "Oh." Harry still doesn't like the idea of drinking blood, truth be told. His body craves it, but he tries to put it off until it's the only thing that will satiate his thirst. It's like a cool glass of water on a hot summer day. "A few weeks," he mumbles. "A few weeks?" Snape snarls, and his wand sparks as if it knows its owner is itching to cast violent spells directly at Harry. "Are you aware of the danger you're putting yourself in? The danger you're putting me in?" "Relax. I'm not about to bite you." Harry would quite like to bite Snape, truth be told, but he's not about to start gnawing at random people unless they specifically ask him to drink from them. Not that he's found anyone mad enough for that yet. "I've got a flask if I need it." "Then drink, you foolish child. Don't you recognize the signs of fading?" "Fading?" Harry stares at Snape, his skin prickling as a shiver travels the length of his spine. Whatever fading is, it sounds rubbish. "What's that? Have you done no research into your predicament at all?" Snape's voice lowers, the same note of anger buzzing beneath the surface. Eventually he sighs, the sound almost resigned. He plucks at his shirt to expose more of his torso. "That can wait. I assume this is what you came here for?" "No. No." Harry clutches the bar tighter, closing his eyes against the way Snape's increasingly exposed throat assaults his senses. "Merlin, Snape, do your bloody shirt up. I've got some Niffler blood in my flask. They donate it to the Vampire Preservation Society. It doesn't harm them. It's delicious." "It really isn't, but it does the trick. No Nifflers were harmed in the making of it, most importantly. If Harry's going to be fucking vampire mooching around the earth for thousands of years, he might as well be an ethical one." "Niffler blood." Snape sounds skeptical, his eyebrows rising. "If you have everything you need, then why on earth did you spend half of the afternoon on your hands and knees to get here?" "Because you know stuff," Harry says. He takes the flask out of his jacket pocket, unscrewing the cap. "Hermione's pregnant and busy with her research at the Ministry. She offered to help. She's a healer now, but Ron says she has to slow down. McGonagall told me I've got to get a handle on managing my stupid bloodlust or whatever before the kids get back to school. She mentioned potions and, naturally, you thought of me. Snape mutters something under his breath that sounds like, thanks a bloody lot, Minerva. Very well. Drink. Then we can discuss your complete and utter stupidity. Marvelous. Rolling his eyes, Harry puts the flask to his lips before lowering it. Do you mind, looking away? Why on earth? With a growl of annoyance, Snape waves his hand and turns his back, folding his arms. I'm not a delicate maiden, Potter. I'm well aware of the response blood elicits in vampires. Why am I not surprised? Harry pulls a face. Even Niffler blood, which is honestly pretty shit, does tend to generate a reaction of sorts. The last thing he wants is for Snape to know what his face looks like when he's bringing himself off. Closing his eyes, Harry tips his head back and drinks from the flask. He's heard stories about the way the taste of blood changes completely when you're a vampire, zinging with flavor like a good Sunday roast or a glass of fine wine. When Nifflers are involved, it just tastes like rodent fart. Even if it's not ideal, the flow of the liquid through his veins is desperately good. His body responds with a thrum of pleasure, a low whimper escaping his lips. The fangs still feel peculiar to Harry, the way they form in response to blood and leave two sharp points in his mouth. He runs his tongue over them, imagining what it might be like to sink them into a willing partner, to drink and drink and... No. Harry musters every ounce of his willpower and chases back another mouthful of the Niffler blood, letting it slip down his throat like butterbeer. He groans a deep, throaty sound that reverberates as though a sonorous has been cast in the quiet room. It's mortifying, how even the worst kind of blood gets him so damn hard. With a gulp, Harry drains the last remnants of the liquid and sighs in relief as a renewed energy returns to his body. After he's gathered himself, Harry opens his eyes and finds Snape staring at him with a peculiar expression on his face. So much for turning away. Harry should have known better than to trust a Slytherin. It's dead embarrassing, Harry says. He screws the flask tightly closed and puts it in his jacket, relieved to finally be able to take it off. It's covered in soil and cobwebs, and the newt and tadpole is surprisingly warm and cozy with the fire going. I didn't think I'd be here so long. Indeed. Snape's voice is raspy. He clears his throat, striding back towards the armchair and settling on it. He jabs his finger towards the sofa. Sit. I suppose I've got nothing better to do. Harry follows Snape's instruction, settling on the sofa as a lazy sleepiness grabs him. That's the other problem about drinking blood in company. It makes him horny, then as tired as erasing a Braxton at the end of his sprint. It's like the aftermath of sex without the orgasms. More's the pity. He's fairly sure if Nifflers weren't involved, the pleasure might be even more intense. Can I have a coffee? Out of the question. Snape's voice has a soothing cadence to it, rich like silky chocolate ganache. Does anybody know where you are? Nope. Harry yawns, his eyes fluttering closed no matter how hard he tries to keep them open. It's the summer halls. Most of the staff go home until late August, so it's just me and the Gringotts goblins. They're running a course. And why don't you go home? Snape's voice really is so nice. It's the best bit about him, Harry thinks. Hogwarts is my home, Harry mumbles. I told you. No more Grimmauld Place. It's just ash and broken stone. Snape doesn't reply, or maybe Harry falls asleep before he can hear the response. I know you can't die, Harry says. He's vaguely aware of the heavy weight of a blanket settling over him and his trainers being unlaced. I don't know how the bloody hell it's possible, but you're like me. Somehow. Severus murmurs something Harry doesn't quite catch, and the blanket is pulled higher, warm and comforting, around Harry's body. Mumbling his thanks, he curls up on the sofa and falls into a deep, dreamless sleep.
All right.
Well, I'm bookmarking that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super intriguing.
Yeah, I haven't read a whole lot of vampire stories.
Such a common Snape trope.
The one that really came to mind when I was reading that was Nocturne by Tyrannog, but in that case, Snape is the vampire. So I was really interested to see a fic where Harry is, and pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this a lot. I don't really like Vampire Snape,
Same, actually.
but the idea of Vampire Harry is so cool.
Yeah.
I love the descriptions of, he's tuned into Snape's blood flow and everything. It just,
Oh, yeah.
the super
Yeah.
senses.
I love that. Like, this is where I admit I'm a Twilight fan. Like, I liked that bit a lot.
This is actually one shot.
24,000 words long.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Not bad.
no. One or two sittings,
Hmm.
depending on your speed. And
I just need somebody to sit and read to me while I'm working.
yeah.
I guess I could use a screen reader, but it's not the same.
Mhm.
I've been loving all these stories where Snape has to help someone solve a problem or solve a mystery.
That's
Uh-huh.
true. That's true.
So neat.
Function he's good at. I feel like there needs to be more private detective Snape stories.
Oh yeah.
Oh, mhm.
I would totally read that.
Oh, and this one also, Snape can't die.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
It's kind of a match made in heaven.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this was recommended to me by Dan Puff.
Yay.
This is last time I actually read a fic written by Dan Puff, which was really good.
Yes, she's a great writer.
Yeah, I love her starry stuff.
And we'll actually have more of it in the coming episodes.
And she makes really great recommendations too on Tumblr.
Yes, that's definitely worth checking out.
Speaking of Tumblr, don't look at your notice.
Well, I while we were reading, I noticed that somebody found like my old blogs that got temporarily purged in 2018.
Oh,
Somebody, yeah.
It was actually a wonderful little blast from the past, seeing some of my like very old art.
oh, neat.
So thank you for that.
I didn't realize you were Dastardly Lemon Drops. And
Yes, I
I follow
am.
you already. And so I looked up your username on Zoom.
Yeah, like my main is this name kind of. I wish I had the old username, but I went into that. My Harry Potter blog is Dastardly Lemon Drops, and my art blog is Corgi Nub. Not to shout myself out. You can edit that out. Edit that out if you want
Oh,
to.
no, we're including it and doing a plug for Dastardly Lemon Drops.
Oh, that's actually the name of my comic.
Yes.
I know that we didn't like talk about it on this episode, that I've been updating every Saturday night, Sunday morning, so I just posted a new page.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For Patreon.
No, this is actually public. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Your art is making me want to draw.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say, you do have a Patreon where you can see pages for Dastardly Lemon Drops and lots of other art early.
And I also just put out my first art book, so.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm about halfway through it. I really enjoy it.
Sorry it's so long.
That's all right. It means you did a whole lot of work last year.
That's true.
I guess, yeah, we should probably just move along to the next one, which is also Severitis.
Yay.
Yes.
Godfathers has a Severitis component to it.
It's a great trope.
Gee, I wonder why Godfathers is called Godfathers. It's almost like
This is Aim and Ignite by Shostakobitch, and it's read by me. Aim and Ignite by Shostakobitch. Summary. Severus Snape is given redemption in a form he least expected, or wanted. When a letter with the power to change everything comes to light, Severus finds himself wondering if destiny is earned, and whether or not it can be returned. His daughter learns the answer over the course of 7 years. Selection from Chapter 4. Previously, on Halloween 1991, Ariel Evans got the shock of her life, even more than when she learned of magic in Hogwarts. A letter from her late mother informs her that Severus Snape is her real father. While running away from the letter, she encounters a troll and angers Snape, who gives her detention. She wrestles with what to tell him and decides she needs more information from him first. Meanwhile, Severus gets a mistaken impression that Ariel is after the Philosopher's Stone. After showing the letter to Ron, the text disappears, leaving the riddle, "Where do we go when we walk on light?" Ariel left for her detention with Snape after receiving several pep talks from Ron and Hermione. She didn't think she would have been able to handle Ron's worried questions and Hermione's searching eyes, not when her own stomach was in knots. But they were just as invested in this as she was, though Ariel was beginning to suspect that Hermione was treating this as more of a puzzle. She'd scoured old texts from the library, while Ron and Ariel had skimmed through her mother's old notebooks, reading aloud anything she thought might be helpful. But the author's words echoed a different time. In rhyme and reason, Ariel didn't think she could even begin to try and decode. That was why, she supposed, Hermione was handling the research aspect. They'd made an agreement that Ariel would not share anything from her mom's letter, only that she'd try and see what Snape did and didn't know. Ron had started to look a little green toward the end, but Hermione had shoved him off in the direction of the boys' dorms, leaving Ariel to begin her descent down to Snape's classroom. They'd assured her that they'd keep searching through her mother's trunk for anything that could lead them in the right direction. Where do we go when we walk on light? Ariel wondered what it meant. She wondered even more what the answer was. She hadn't brought the letter with her, mostly because she was mad at it. What kind of stupid letter disappeared after reading it anyway? How was she supposed to prove anything to Snape if it came to it? What if she told him and he thought she was a liar? Or worse, what if he tried to get her expelled for it? She couldn't remember ever feeling this nervous about something, ever. Ariel let her feet drag a little as she made her way down to the dungeons. She'd never had a detention before, and wasn't looking forward to the fact that her first one was with Snape. Fred and George griped a lot about them, but she had a feeling they were exaggerating a whole lot of it, and mostly to mess with Ron. As she passed by the Slytherin dorm, she made a face, sticking out her tongue, secretly hoping Malfoy was directly on the other side. She couldn't stand him. She remembered punching Dudley once when he'd made some stupid, thoughtless comment about her parents and clocking him right in the nose, so hard it had started to bleed. Ariel had that same urge whenever she saw the look Malfoy gave Hermione, like she was dirt underneath his boot. The way he'd spoken to her on the Hogwarts Express was enough to, almost, make her lose it. Snape liked Malfoy, though. Well, maybe liked was too strong of a word, but he certainly favored him. This was a thought in her head when Ariel rapped on the door to his classroom. It flew open, a dark, foreboding figure looming over her, like a cat about to pounce on its prey. "Have some fire," her mom had said. "Be better." She stared up at Snape. His black eyes glared down at her menacingly, the light from the candles lining the corridor reflecting off them. "In." Snape jerked his head, pulling back the door so Ariel could enter. She remembered Fred and George telling her and Ron about Snape, but it was just how she'd pictured it on the first day of classes, minus some of the torture devices the twins had listed. A dull light filtered in from the candles, most of them down to the wick. It was darker than it usually was, an eerie wall of blues and greys illuminated on the shelves. Ariel shuddered as she looked at the specimens inside, swearing one of them winked at her. She wondered how he worked in here. Snape swept past her, his black robes brushing past her, and pointed at 2 large buckets of dead toads. "You're going to get them," Snape said in a soft voice, the same one he used in class. It was both an order and somehow a direct insult. The poor dead toads stared up at her, pleading with her not to do this terrible thing with their lifeless eyes. Snape dropped a pair of gloves. Though they barely could be called that, they were full of holes and fraying at the seams, onto the table beside the buckets. "All of them?" Ariel asked, horrified. Snape gave her a horrible smile, one that made a shiver run up her spine. "All of them." She bit the inside of her cheek, slapping down the gloves on the bench with more force than necessary. That hard little rock inside her chest she'd felt last night, gazing up at her dead mom's pictures, was growing hot, burning against her throat. It wanted out in that moment, but instead, Ariel swallowed roughly and took a deep breath. If Snape had noticed her flare-up, he didn't say so. He stalked over to his desk to set down a pile of papers. Ariel wondered if they were from her class. Snape never handed her back papers, though. He'd never returned a single thing to her, never given her a comment, or even told her that she was doing well. Ariel only assumed because he hadn't insulted her potion-making abilities. Yet. That was a good thing, she supposed, because she rather liked. Her stomach did a series of backflips. She was good at potions because of the potions professor. The poor dead toads stared up at her, their eyes as empty as the space where her heart had been. Ariel studied Snape while he worked. He wasn't very handsome, but he wasn't that old either. She didn't know how old he was, but if he'd gone to school with her mom and dad, that meant he was still kind of young, didn't it? All adults in her mind were old, but he wasn't old like Professor Dumbledore. Ariel could still remember the nasty shock she'd gotten when the headmaster had told her Snape was a teacher, back in the Dursleys' kitchen. Back then, he'd just been a scary adult. But Snape the teacher was someone really, really scary. "Snape the teacher is your dad," said a very nasty little voice inside her head. "Isn't that wonderful?" Ariel ripped into the next poor dead toad a little too harshly, blood and guts splattering her robes. She winced, mumbling an apology under her breath as its mouth hung open at her in shock. Her eyes flitted back to Snape, who was still ignoring her. What had her mom seen in him that she couldn't? He was so mean. Ariel was 15 poor dead toads in when she decided that she was going to try and talk to him. Snape still hadn't looked up from the papers he was grading, his mouth fixed in a tight line as he slashed through what looked like essays with a blood-red quill. She stared down at the poor dead toad guts, noticing her breath coming out slightly ragged, like she'd just finished running. The Sorting Hat had wanted her in Slytherin, and Slytherins were awful good at this sort of thing, weren't they? They were good at getting what they wanted without being too obvious. But she wasn't a Slytherin. She was a Gryffindor. She set down the carving knife, took a deep breath. "Did you and the other professors ever find out how the troll got into the school?" Snape's eyes flickered to her, completely uninterested. "Magic." She blinked back. "What kind of magic?" "The most unspeakable kind." Ariel wondered if he was being purposefully annoying. "Has a troll ever gotten into the school before?" She tried instead. "Not since I was hired." Snape stopped grading to give her a dark, warning glare. It felt like looking into the mouth of a cave. "Okay, so how long have you been teaching?" She tried to make herself sound forceful, but it came out small, like she was wondering if she could ask the question. "Too long." He went back to the essay, his quill probably ruining some poor first year's self-esteem. She bit her tongue, picking up the carving knife again. "You don't like teaching?" "I don't like this conversation." He stopped grading, only his eyes moving to give her a pointed glower. "You're never this chatty." "You don't know that." Snape's eyes narrowed dangerously. He set the quill down. "I do." "You and I have never talked before." Ariel stuck the carving knife into the table. Snape finally noticed it then, his black eyes snapping up to meet hers. "You want to have a conversation?" Snape hissed. "Fine. Let's discuss last night." Oh no, had it only been last night? Everything felt like it had happened eons ago. The secret weighed so heavily on Ariel's mind that it felt like it had been with her all her life. She might have been a Gryffindor, but she didn't think she had it in her to have a conversation with Snape, without letting it slip that Lily Potter thought he was her real dad. Hadn't they had this conversation already anyway? Maybe he was still mad about it. He'd kicked her out when she'd asked about Aunt Petunia. She had a feeling it wasn't a pleasant subject for him. They had that in common. Ariel squared her chin and tried to make herself look brave. "What about it?" "You know what." Snape bared his teeth, which were yellow and uneven on the bottom. "Let's really discuss what you saw." She picked up another ported toad, ripping the knife down its belly to keep her mind from wandering to the not stupid, letter. "I didn't do anything wrong besides smacking into you. I'm sorry about that, by the way. I was running from..." "So you were running from something." Snape's nostrils flared aggressively, like a bull about to charge. Ariel set the ported toad down on the table again, confused with this sudden burst of anger. "Not really. I just didn't want to be there anymore." Snape stared at her, suspicion plainly written all over his face. His lip curled as he slammed a drawer closed, standing to lean forward over the desk. She stared back at him, trying to see whatever her mum had. Something inside her suddenly itched, this need to tell him, because he was suspicious and he wanted to know something. Ariel just couldn't figure out what it was that he was after. "The stone," Snape said flatly. "I know you know." It took Ariel a minute to comprehend what he was saying. "The stone? What stone?" "You know what blasted stone," Snape snarled. "I know you and your little friends ran into that beast guarding it. I overheard Mr. Malfoy discussing it, so don't lie to me." All of the blood drained from her face. She'd forgotten about the dog and the revenge she'd been planning to take against Draco. The three-headed dog was guarding a stone? It must have been pretty important, because Snape was getting angrier and angrier. Of course, Draco had told Snape. She didn't know why she expected any different. "I don't know about any stone," Ariel said carefully. "Honest. Draco tricked us into going down there for a stupid duel, but I didn't see anything there besides Fluffy." "No. Ariel Evans didn't find anything remotely interesting about a giant three-headed monster guarding the forbidden corridor." "No." Her face felt hot. "What does this have to do with last night?" Snape's glare hardened, the lines of his face deep against the dim candlelight. "You're going to tell me what you saw. It's imperative myself and the other professors know." Her head was going to explode. Ariel was sure of it. "What would I have seen? You know we ran into the troll, and we didn't know it was there because Hermione and I weren't at the feast." "No more questions," he growled at her, like he wanted to hex her, or worse. "What did you see?" "I didn't see anything." "You did." "No, I didn't. And even if I did see something, what would it have to do with..." "Because someone is trying to steal it." "You idiot," his tone finished the sentence. "Oh." Ariel felt herself bristling. "Well, of course I would tell you if I saw something. Why wouldn't I?" "Because you're a meddlesome Gryffindor," Snape sneered. "I am not," she said, a little too loudly. Snape gave her a dangerous look that knocked her down at least 2 pegs. "I'm telling the truth. Hermione and I were just sitting there, and I don't know, I really didn't feel good all of a sudden." Even Ariel realized in that moment how terrible of a liar she was. It made her mad because she was telling most of the truth. She was just leaving out a very small, huge, gigantic, nuclear detail. Snape, however, still wasn't buying it. If she'd seen someone trying to steal some magic stone, she would have said something. She wasn't completely mental. "I promise I didn't see anyone or anything," Ariel said, just as Snape started to threaten her with something about the headmaster. "It was just Hermione and I. We don't know who let that troll in. And I don't know about this stone you keep mentioning. What's so important about it, anyway? Who'd want to steal it?" Snape deflated a bit, but his eyes were still ice cold and unrelentingly staring her down. "It's none of your business." "You're accusing me of knowing about it, so I'd say it's pretty important." "I'd say you'd better watch it." Snape's eyes flashed. "Or I'll have you gutting toads till morning." "Well, if I'm gutting toads, I can't look for this stone then, yeah?" Ariel didn't know what caused her to say that, And while she was quite happy with herself for being brave and not letting Snape scare her up until then, it all dissipated at the thunderous expression that rolled over his face. "I'll stay away from the stone," Ariel said quickly. Something that felt like her flight or fight instinct was kicking in. "And tell you what I was really doing during the feast last night, if you tell me something." Snape jerked away as if she'd thrown something at him. She could tell she'd caught him off guard, again, just like she had last night. But he stayed frozen. He didn't break eye contact. Ariel could tell he wasn't really looking at her anymore. "How is that in any way relevant? You're in detention because you were doing something you shouldn't have. If you're withholding information..." "It's not." She crossed her arms at him. "I told you I don't know anything you don't." "Isn't the stone enough?" he snarled. "You're not allowed near it. You're not supposed to know. And if I catch you trying to find it, so help me..." "No, I don't care about that." She did. Her brain was already running through how she was going to explain all this to Hermione and Ron when she got back upstairs. "You knew, Aunt Petunia, but you haven't talked to me at all. Why?" Snape just stared at her, his expression a mixture of disgust and blatant shock. He didn't wear the look well at all. Ariel had somehow gotten in front of his desk. She didn't remember her feet moving or telling herself to leave the safety of the workbench and the poor dead toads. He was taller up close, a whole lot taller than she was. But she was shorter than all the other first years. She'd overheard Malfoy telling Pansy one day, how could someone so small have defeated you-know-who? "You're treading on dangerously thin ice, girl," Snape said in a quiet, deadly voice, one that was louder than any scream. For some reason, Ariel was not scared by this. "Why won't you just tell me? You said Aunt Petunia and my mom didn't get along. Did you know her?" His face had gone hollow. He sagged against his chair. "Not this again." "Did you know her?" Ariel asked again. She was breathing hard and fast. "Did you know my mom? She wrote me a letter. I read it last night. That's why I was upset, okay? Everyone knew her and my dad, but no one knew them. You did, though. You said so. You were her friend." Snape fell back into his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose like he had a bad headache. He was silent for a few minutes. The only sound in the room, Ariel's labored breathing, and something simmering in a cauldron nearby. "I'm telling you the truth, I swear." She cursed herself for the wobble in her voice. "That's all I was doing. I didn't see anyone. It was just Hermione and I. Please tell me. Please, please, please." The things in the jars behind his desk were the only things moving, like they were nodding along in agreement. Ariel kept her gaze even, watching him, watching his eyes. But there was nothing there. He'd gone cold and dark, like a person when turned to stone. There was such a lack of reaction, and yet such a sudden shift in his demeanor, that Ariel knew the letter must be true. He might not have remembered everything, but he did remember her mum. Her heart ballooned like her courage. "Did you know her? I asked Mrs. Weasley, but she said only in passing, and Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon basically banned me from asking. I've never met someone who was their friend. Were you?" "Was I what?" His voice was sharp and precise. Ariel couldn't help but jump at his response, but her chest hammered away, like an axe beating a block of wood. Her friend. Something happened in his eyes, a light the size of the end of a needle. It shot through her like one. "Something like that." Snape's voice was twisted and uneven, identical to her mom's handwriting. Ariel was beginning to learn that Snape did not talk like a normal person. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I did not wish to tell you," he said tonelessly. "Is that why you came to the Dursleys?" Ariel crossed her arms tightly across her chest. "Because you were friends with Mom? Or something like that?" Snape buried his face in his hands, massaging his temples with his thumbs. "No, I came as an incredibly unfortunate result of circumstance." She flinched. Snape didn't seem to notice. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. It made Ariel feel terrible and angry, an insatiable need to ask and no more roaring away inside her, but stifled by her guilt. There was no reason for her to feel bad, but she supposed Snape, looking so defeated, was only because of her questions. "I meant it before, you know," Ariel said, placing the carving knife on his desk. Her hand stung from gripping it so tightly. "I really didn't see anything. I was just reading her letter." He gave her a tired, weary glare, pinching the bridge of his nose. She could tell that she'd convinced him of enough to cross her off his thief list, but she also couldn't blame him for being skeptical. Ariel had, after all, mowed him down in the middle of a corridor. The need to know something, however, seemed to be far less important than the idea of talking about her mum. "Do you know anything about making words disappear?" Ariel asked in a small voice. Snape blinked, his eyebrows furrowing. "Excuse me?" "Like off of a page?" His lip curled. "Why, what did you do?" "Nothing." She sat down in the chair across from him. Snape gave her a look like she'd sprouted a second head. "This morning I was sitting with Ron and Hermione, and the letter, it erased itself. I really didn't do anything. Why do you think I'm always doing something wrong?" He responded with another cold, direct reply, like he was aiming his words at her forehead. "Because it's in your nature." It was Ariel's turn to give him a baffled look. "What's that supposed to mean?" He waved her off. "Some letters will fade away once they deem that the person it was intended for has satisfied its requirements." "Like what?" Snape sighed, a short, frustrated sound. "There's oftentimes an emotional attachment left within this category of charms. Professor Flitwick would be able to help you." Ariel bit her lip. "You seem to know what you're talking about." There was a long pause. Snape had leaned forward again, his chin resting on a closed fist. His eyebrows were knitted together in an expression of both deep annoyance and calculating certainty. She could see his eyes boring into hers, trying to figure her out. Ariel had the feeling that Snape wasn't taken off guard very often, and she wasn't exactly trying to be open with him. Hermione was right. She couldn't tell him the truth until she knew more, but she also had to give him something. She wanted to ask more about her mum. It was an itch in her bones, in her teeth. She wondered if her eyes were familiar at all to him, or if he even saw her at all. Snape had a way of looking at you, like you weren't really there, like you didn't matter one bit. "We're done here," Snape said coldly. "Return to your dormitory, Miss Evans." "What?" Ariel shot out of the chair. "But I'm not finished with the—" "I said," his voice was deadly, even though it was barely above a whisper, "we're done." She felt like crying, the condemning glare too much to handle when she was so close. Why didn't he want to help her? If he'd known her mom and had been her friend, why was he acting like he wanted nothing to do with it? What kind of friend was he? They hadn't been just friends, though. There was something more. "Why don't you know?" Ariel wanted to shout, wanted to throw the rest of the poor dead toads at him. "Why did you want to forget?" Instead, Ariel peeled off her gloves and shoved them onto his desk. Snape watched her with a bored, guarded sort of look that made her want to punch him, like Malfoy. She pivoted on her heel without a word and headed for the door. "Miss Evans," Snape called from his desk. Ariel turned around, her heart giving an excited start. "If I find you've gone anywhere near that third-floor corridor again—" His voice was like a riptide, pulling mercilessly, making itself known, threatening to drag her somewhere deep and dark and untouchable. "I will make you regret it." She did not nod or say "yes, sir," or even turn away. Ariel swallowed the lump that had formed in her throat and thought about her mom's lost letter. "Don't give a damn what anyone thinks." "She mentioned you," said Ariel. "I thought you'd want to know." In the meantime, she was just going to have to land herself another detention.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's...
I think I've read this before, like a long time ago,
Oh, okay.
or something very similar.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I haven't read a lot of Severitis, so I don't know if this is a common storyline.
I have not read a lot of it where it's like an actual biological connection, so I don't know, but it is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really prefer the biological connection for reasons, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not uncommon.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I run into it a fair amount.
Yeah, the setup for this one is Lily notices that Snape saves her sometimes during battles, and they run into each other at the Three Broomsticks, and they start having a long conversation, which turns into a night of passion. But at the end, Snape's like, "You have to obliviate me. I can't live with this."
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
he doesn't remember.
Oh my
Oh boy.
God.
What a twist.
Whoa,
That's crazy.
that's traumatizing. This poor man.
Oh no.
Yeah.
He has no idea. Oh my god. Okay.
He needs a hug.
Yeah. So he spends much of the story angry
Yeah.
and resistant.
Understandably.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I love Snilly, so I'm here for that. That's so, wow, the layers.
Uh-huh.
That's great.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a great story. Another work in progress. I believe they're done or almost done with the third year.
How
Oh.
cool.
I'm still working at it, so yeah.
Very interesting. The one biological Severitis, and I think I maybe have mentioned this before, that I really enjoyed, and I cannot remember who wrote it or what it's called, but it was Snape actually gave birth to Harry, and James was the father.
Oh my goodness.
I'm writing one of those.
Oh my God.
Okay, well that's good because I really like that and I could never find it again, and I'm like, oh man, I'm so into this.
I'm writing a whip where basically Snape dies in the war and ends up dropped back in time.
Oh.
Oh,
He was working with Harry to end the war, and they both died in order to try and go back in time to prevent it all from happening because it had all gone to shit.
ooh, more time
Yeah.
fuckery.
Ooh.
And because they'd gone back in time in a way in which Harry was not born yet, Snape ended up with him because they time traveled together
Huh.
and then had to give birth to him. But he was still Lily and James's biological kid.
Oh, that's wild.
Oh,
He kind of like went and contacted them and was like, I'm sorry, I kind of stole your
Oh.
oh my God.
I love that. I love that.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, I like Jebris too, so I'm here for it.
Yeah, it took me a while to cotton on to it because, well, I don't know why exactly, because I like him with all the other Marauders.
There's some hurdles to it.
But I was working like a really boring job where I ended up like playing all kinds of fan fiction scenarios in my head, and there ended up being some Jebris ones that snuck up on me, I guess.
Oh.
I really like the OT3. I think it's really fun, where Lily, James, and Severus are together.
Oh yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah, Snilly was like my probably first ship, like period. So I'm always here for any rendition of that. And this is, I mean, the one we just read. That's like
That's fun.
it is. It's like it kind of takes those layers of trauma that are like built into that relationship and kind of puts a new spin on it, especially because it's mostly told through memory in the actual series. And the idea that he has no memory of it, that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, poor Ariel, gender swap for Harry, of course,
Yeah.
Yeah.
is just trying to get him to act like a father
Yeah.
or even talk to her.
Oof.
So yeah, lots of
Suffering.
That's intense. I love it.
yes.
Oh.
All right. Now the next one, I've kind of fallen in love with fics by Montrasity, and this is a portion of one called A Daily Dose of Sunshine.
Happiness. Taken from Chapter 6 of A Daily Dose of Sunshine by Montrasity. Severus had no dreams to fulfill, no grand ambitions to chase after, no future to fight for, no purpose to seek out, and so he'd chosen to just die. For the last 6 months of his life, however, he chooses to be selfish, to be happy, even if he had to create it with his own hands. Snape created a happiness potion by heavily modifying the elixir to induce euphoria. This will be his 3rd dose. His eyes fluttered closed, only to open again moments later, the dull ache behind them never quite retreating. The stillness of the room felt odd, broken only by the faint rustling of fabric as he shifted against the bed. Severus was holding happiness in his hands. The vial was half empty, 40 milliliters left from the first that he'd drank. It was warm, too warm. He couldn't get used to it, the way it pulsed with a subtle heat that seemed alive in his palm. His fingers tightened around the glass without meaning to, and he lay there, unmoving, letting the heat seep into his skin like an ember pressed too close. His heart thudded in his chest, heavy and arrhythmic, each beat vibrating through his ribcage as he stared at the potion. His breathing hitched, shallow and uneven, and his pulse fluttered beneath his skin. The soft glow of the golden liquid reflected in his dark eyes, throwing faint light into the hollows of his face. It made him look skeletal, stripped bare, like the weight of the vial was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. Severus catalogued every detail of the vial with the mechanical precision his mind always defaulted to in moments like this. The weight, the warmth, the way the potion's glow refracted in tiny dancing patterns. It was happiness. Mulciber had agreed to help him. That thought alone made his blood hum with the kind of exhilaration that felt foreign in his veins. The plan was in motion now. He had everything he needed. He had happiness. He had his paradox. He had 6 months. Severus shifted in his bed, moving so that he was now laying on his back. He opened the vial, feeling his heart falter as the vial opened with a small pop. He parted his lips and brought the vial up to it. Severus tilted it slowly, just a fraction, his thumb pressing gently against the curve of the neck, guiding the vial upward to his lips. The liquid inside shimmered, caught in the light, and for a moment he watched the gold dance inside the glass, swirling like the waves of a calm river. His heart thudded in his chest, soft, steady, a reminder of the warmth already beginning to spread through him. But it was faint, almost too faint to notice, because the liquid wasn't inside him yet. As he tilted the vial further, the liquid began to move. It wasn't fast, not at all. It trickled at first, as if it were reluctant to leave the safety of its confines. He let the motion guide him, a gentle, deliberate rhythm. He tipped it just enough for the golden liquid to flow to the edge, and the smell reached his nose, subtle yet rich, like honey mixed with the warmth of a long-forgotten summer. With a delicate flick of his wrist, he allowed the drop to fall, and then another, and then, slowly, he tilted the vial further, and then, finally, it slid forward, spilling against his tongue in the gentlest of ways. Like a soft, slow tide. It wasn't a rush. No, it was deliberate, slow, like the world was bending to let him feel every drop, every second of it. He swallowed, the liquid heavy as it traveled downward, and as it settled in the back of his throat, then his stomach, a ripple of warmth spread outward, soft and stretching, a steady hum that filled him entirely. Thick and heavy, it coated his tongue, filling his mouth with a warmth that spread immediately down his throat and settled deep in his chest. For a moment it felt as though the sun itself had slipped inside him, burning away the cold, dull ache that had taken root there. The effect was instant. Happiness. It coursed through his veins, sudden and all-consuming, erasing the sharp, jagged edges of the world. His mind quieted, the ever-present noise dissolving into a blissful hum. His muscles, always taut and braced, softened, easing in a way that felt almost foreign. He practically melted into his bed. The happiness spread through him like liquid silk, slow and impossibly soft, a warmth that crept up from his chest and unfurled in slow waves, touching every part of him. It started on the tip of his tongue, blooming like a delicate flower, and then it spiraled outward, pooling into the tips of his fingers, the soles of his feet, even the tips of his hair. Severus's grip on the vial loosened, and it fell from his fingers, clinking lightly against the stone floor, rolling under his bed. But he didn't care. The moment the liquid slipped down his throat, he felt it gentle at first, like a warm breeze caressing his skin. But then it deepened, soft but insistent, and it pressed against him from all sides as if it were wrapping around him, tucking him into something safe, something whole. His heart didn't race. No. It slowed. His ribs expanded with each breath, but the pressure, the tension he carried after so long, melted. The dull thuds of his heartbeat deep inside his chest became a comfortable rhythm, like the lapping of water on a quiet shore, steady, slow, soothing. There was no panic, no urgency, only the softness of the fall, and the way his body settled against his bed in a languid surrender, sliding down. He closed his eyes, leaning his head against his pillows as he sank into the feeling. Breathing in, breathing out. His fingers twitched occasionally, the only part of him still faintly aware of the world outside, this overwhelming stillness. But even that sensation was fading. There was nothing sharp, nothing that demanded his attention. Just the quiet, the weightlessness, the sheer sensation of being. His chest barely moved, only rising and falling in a slow, rhythmic pattern, like a leaf drifting on water. Every inhale brought more of the warmth in, a liquid light swirling inside him, soft and slow, until the entire world around him dimmed in comparison. He was drowning in warmth, in comfort, in bliss so gentle it was almost too much to bear. He could have stayed there forever, his body sinking into the stone, his limbs so light, so full of warmth and comfort, that he felt for a moment he might float. His thoughts, though they still whispered at the edges of his mind, felt distant, like faint echoes on the wind. He was so happy. God, was he happy. A thought crept in, almost like an afterthought, a reminder, a soft murmur in the back of his mind. Tomorrow, this would be his unchanging reality. He had solved the riddle, had accounted for every angle, and by tomorrow, the happiness, the warmth, the bliss that wrapped him in a tight embrace, all of it would be there. None of it would falter. The words floated in his mind, settling deep in his bones. He felt that warmth bleed into his skin, into his soul. Tomorrow. This would be it. All he would need, all he would want. Severus let out a breath, his chest heavy with satisfaction, but not a hint of discomfort. He would never have to feel anything else again. Not loneliness, not the crushing weight of doubt or fear. Only the quiet, infinite warmth. Nothing else mattered. Nothing else existed. Just happiness.
I want some of that.
Yeah.
That sounds scary.
It's so seductive.
Yeah. It almost is a little sad to me, like that he needs
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
something like he only can get happiness in sort of an artificial way.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, very evocative.
Yeah, Montrasity writes such beautiful writing like that. Let's see, in this case, he's been experimenting with the happiness and he finds that it works really well until Potter and Black start picking on him.
Yeah.
Oh,
They actually throw him in the lake and he almost drowns.
oh
Oh, boy.
my God.
Yeah, so he's decided that since nobody messes with Mulciber, that he's going to get him to date him. So it's a fake boyfriend situation.
Oh, I love those.
I love a fake dating situation.
Yeah, very good.
That's fun.
Yeah, I don't know. I just love all the monstrosities and various ways of Snape and Mulciber coming together.
Mm.
Yeah, that's such a cool setup.
I actually haven't read a lot of that pairing before, not for any particular reason. I just haven't happened to, but this seems really interesting to me. Like I listened to Pyrrhic recording this because obviously we only have one mic.
Uh-huh.
And I was, as I was listening to him record it, I was like, this is really interesting. And when he was done, he actually said that it kind of felt like reading a guided meditation.
Yeah.
It felt like listening to one, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It did.
All right. Well, that's all of our birthday show, and I hope everybody enjoyed listening to these fics. You can go to our additional reading page at snapechatpodcast.com for links.
Happy birthday to Snape.
Oh, happy birthday,
Yeah.
Snape.
Happy birthday.
Woo.
Happy birthday, Maso and Lazarus, too.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for coming, Lazarus.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Snapecentric.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, we love having you. And Maso.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks also to Dragomir, who had to leave earlier. This is Snapecentric. See you next time.
Bye.
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 And that's the show. I hope you enjoyed the fics and chat. Thanks to authors Lazarus, Nocturn, Writcraft, Shostakobitch, and Montrasity, for permission to feature their fics. Thanks to Lazarus, Snail, Maso, and Pirip for reading, and to Lazarus, Dragomir, Snail, and Maso for joining me for the listening party. Check out our additional reading page at snapechatpodcast.com for links to all these wonderful stories and more. And here we say goodbye. We wish we didn't have to, but it hasn't escaped our notice that life isn't fair. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Tumblr and Blue Sky, or leave a comment on our website at snapechatpodcast.com or on Spotify. We'd love to hear from you. Many thanks to Nyx for her continued work on our website. Be sure to check out Care of Magical Shippers podcast at alwayssnape.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay snarky.